which fined him $10,000 for practicing medicine without a license. He does not have a medical license, and for providing and instructing and giving children hormone blockers. That is what the finding of the Maryland Department, the state of Maryland, its medical licensing board was. And I'll submit that for the record, I hope with unanimous consent.
I'm assuming that you don't know what I'm about to tell you, or you wouldn't say something that was so dishonest. You may or may not know that David Geyer sued the American.
Oh, I do know that. I do know that. That doesn't change the findings, nor does it change the experience of the parents who testified.
That finding was reversed by court, and he was awarded $5 million.
That is not true. Now, let me ask. So I just want confirmation. David Geyer is still at HHS. I wrote you a letter about this a month ago, and you have not responded.
Well, I apologize for that. That's our bad, and I will respond. But David Geyer is not managing autism research.
So what is his job?
What is
his job at HHS? This is somebody who gave parents the impression that he was a doctor and gave hormone blockers to children as young as 8, telling them that hormone blockers would somehow magically help their kids with autism.
His father is
His father is a doctor, but he is not. And his father was not in the room and did not, and he faked his father's signature according to the State Board of Medicine.
And that ruling was overturned by a court. So what you're saying is just wrong. It's just a lie. And they were actually, the court said that the Maryland Board of Physicians was guilty of actual malice in fabricating those charges against David Geyer.
Well, we will pursue this. And I will submit for the record.
So do you want to know why we brought David Geyer in?
Sure.
Because it wasn't to run autism research. In 2002, the CDC runs a vaccine safety data link, which is supposed to be the vaccine information for the biggest HMOs that are supposed to allow CDC to have a surveillance system for vaccine injury. It's a backstop system. The CDC will not let any physicians in there to look at it, or any scientists, independent scientists.
He's neither a scientist nor a physician.
Right. Congress ordered CDC to open it to the Geyers. So they are the only scientists who have ever been in there.
But again, Mr. Geyer is not a scientist. Thank you.
Independent scientists.
Okay, Senator Hassan's time's expired, but before we move on, did you have a unanimous consent request that I heard in there, Senator?
Thank you, Senator Hawley. I did. A unanimous consent request for the printout of the website that shows Dr. Geyer is in. Not Dr. Geyer, that's his father, Mr. Geyer, is employed, and also a unanimous consent request for the finding from the Board of Licensing in Maryland.
Without objection to both of those. And now, Mr. Kennedy, before we get to my time, do you want, if you'd like to finish your response, go ahead, and then I'll recognize myself.
David Geyer is the only living independent scientist who's seen the VSD inside. There's been a lot of monkey business with the VSD, including allegations of fraud. And he was hired by an independent contractor not as an HHS employee, but by an independent contractor, to look at the documents that we were getting to the VSD to see if they conformed with what he saw between 2002 and 2016. And that's the only reason that he was brought in, to see if there was, there's so much information that has disappeared from that database. The only way we could find out what information disappeared was because he was the one guy who saw it.
And just let the record show he's not a scientist. Thank you very much.
All right. Secretary Kennedy, different subject, on a different subject. You and I have talked before, when you've been before this committee, and you and I have talked in person a number of times about mifepristone. I just want to follow up with you, because since the last time you were before the committee and the last time you and I spoke, there's been a major study by the Ethics and Public Policy Center of 865,727 prescribed cases of mifepristone abortions, chemical abortions, between 2017 and 2023. Have you seen this study? Are you familiar with this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I am.
You will remember then that this data shows the biggest study on mifepristone done, I think, ever, and it showed that nearly 11% of women experience very serious adverse health effects, to include sepsis, hemorrhaging, infection, of course, emergency room visits. Now, by the way, that's 22 times higher. That rate is 22 times higher than the FDA's current label, which says it's just 0.5, the incidence of serious adverse health events. So my question to you is this. You previously testified at the committee that you would do a top-to-bottom review of mifepristone. Mifepristone is subject to a REMS currently. You have said you'll do a top-to-bottom review. Do you continue to stand by that, and don't you think that this new data shows that the need to do a review is in fact very pressing?
I think the new data, first of all, it validates the CAS study, which is previously probably the most comprehensive data that we've seen on it, and it is, and it's alarming, and clearly it indicates that at very least the label should be changed. I've asked Marty McCary, who's the director of FDA, to do a complete review and to report back.
Good. Do you have any sense of timeline?
I do not.
It will be a top priority, though, for you. Is that safe to say? You say that it probably indicates the label needs to be changed. Do you think it's also important as part of your review to consider whether it's necessary now to put back in place the long-standing safety protocols that always accompanied mifepristone until the last administration? In-person dispensing, doctor visits, screening for ectopic pregnancies?
I know that Marty McCary will make a recommendation. I feel that the policy changes will ultimately go through the White House, through President Trump.
But you'll make a recommendation based on the data?
Yes.
Good. On a different subject, talking about the advertising that is routinely done by pharmaceutical companies, you have been a longtime critic of direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising. You wrote, I think, in the Wall Street Journal a little over a year ago about the need to revisit guidelines around pharmaceutical advertising. Is that still your view? I mean, has your view changed?
Pharmaceutical advertising is particularly insidious because, you know, commercial advertising has some level of First Amendment protection, not as great as political speech. It doesn't have the kind of strict scrutiny applied to political speech. It still has a level of protection. But pharmaceutical advertising is unique because if a company is advertising, for example, Coca-Cola, the consumer has a choice to whether to buy it, and then he's spending his own money on it, so he's got skin in the game. With pharmaceutical advertising, the consumer's purchasing the product, and it's usually the most expensive form of the product, so that they're usually advertising because they want to bury the existence and the availability of generic drugs that are much cheaper and equally effective. And the consumer is spending not his own money, and most often our money, taxpayer money. Furthermore, the pharmaceutical ad is getting tax deductions, so we are funding it.
I want to ask you just about that. Under current law, pharma companies can deduct their advertising costs as a business expense. Do you think it's time to change that?
Yeah, and I've actually have a call into Scott Bassan about that, but I'm working very hard on this issue, and we expect to come out with a policy within the next few weeks.
Well, let me propose that